What's going on, guys? Stevie here with Lucky Crit, and today we're going to be talking about the potential Fire Emblem 16 rumored leaks that have been going around for quite a while now. I've been considering making this video for a decent amount of time. Originally, when they first came out, we didn't have too much to talk about, and I wasn't sure how I felt about them at that point. However, now we do have some more additions to these new leaks, so we're going to be taking a look at them today and hopefully trying to figure out if these leaks are even remotely credible or if it's just a really big hoax. So let's take a look at what we have. So all of this information is coming from a Serenus Forest user who's getting it from somebody else who's posting it to 4chan, and all of this information I will be posting in the description of this video if you do want to take a look at it for yourself. But right off the bat, we have storyline, a gothic horror theme, darker and more mature, but not M-rated, more like the U-Draw games. There are going to be two sides to this conflict. It's going to be humans versus a brand new race of characters called the Kibair, or Kibaire. These are going to be vampire characters, basically. So you can already see the sort of tension here between the human faction and the vampires, which could actually be interesting, but we'll get into that in a little bit. The Avatar is going to play a more villainous role as a Camus-like anti-hero, and the Fire Emblem will be a sundial, so it'll gather energy from the sun and the moon, and can either empower or destroy the Kibair. Both sides are seeking it. So right off the bat, as my first initial impression, I do think that a gothic horror Fire Emblem could be really interesting. A lot of people are big fans of Castlevania, and I do think that a lot of these sort of themes can fit in really well with Fire Emblem when it comes to the classes and the characters and stuff. So if this was real, which obviously we have no proof of, and we will go through some things that I think make this kind of seem less than real. Overall, I'd say if this was real, it would be pretty exciting for me personally, because I think that if they pulled it off correctly, this could actually be a really interesting entry into the series. So the next point I want to make, though, is that the Avatar playing a more villainous role seems cool, but it also kind of seems like I'm not sure how people would bond or find a connection with that character, especially if this, let's say this character is sort of an anti-vampire, like Vampire Hunter or something like that. I think a lot of people would be sort of maybe disappointed in this character with some of the decisions that they would make in the storyline. You know, what if, you know, they're trying to attack some fan favorite characters that happen to be vampires or something like that. I don't see how that would work out so much like that. But I do think it would be interesting to have a hero that's not so upbeat and positive all the time, which we tend to get, you know, for the most part. The Fire Emblem being a sundial, I think that, obviously that fits in with this story, but I also think that's interesting, and I would hope, you know, that in future Fire Emblem games, the Fire Emblem itself will actually take a bigger role in the story, because it's kind of been something that's less than prominent in a lot of the games in the series. I mean, honestly, it's one of the first things that you realize as a Fire Emblem fan is that the Fire Emblem actually, in and of itself, usually has nothing to do or very little to do with the story, aside from being like a MacGuffin or something. So I would be all for this game having a prominently featured Fire Emblem, so that would be cool. And Sundial, I think, does work with this. So now, for the characters, we have humans. Elaine is the protagonist. He is a knight-errant class. He uses a sword and upholds the dominant religion and firmly believes in it. Learn to see the Kibair as a threat. His mission is to unite the humans in the war against the Kibair. We've also got Huan, the Jagan character, a laid-back great knight past his prime who aids Elaine on his mission. And we have Gwendolyn, a male-sounding character, Myrmidon, self-proclaimed Kibair hunter, Godfrey, unknown class so far, a knight said to resort to extreme measures. And then for the Kibair, we have Dracul, who is the Avatar, which is kind of a silly name, I think. You know, you go from Robin to Corrin to Dracul. Does that sound right? I don't know. Vassal class, Camus-like anti-hero, bastard prince or princess, might be able to choose personality. Now, this is, I think, one of the things that could potentially be a red flag here, because if you are able to select your personality for this particular Avatar character within the game, either fans are going to be disappointed that that whatever dialogue changes as a result of your personality switch. I don't think the developers would have enough time and resources to be able to make the story actually change depending upon which personality you chose. So more than likely, it would be a scenario where your dialogue would be different, but the scene still plays out pretty much the same, which I think is kind of disappointing, you know, in that regard. Obviously, in our top 10 hopes and desires for Fire Emblem video, I did mention wanting sort of branched storyline paths and actual player choices in the next Fire Emblem game. So I would be really excited if they did decide to go the extra mile and add that in. But that's going to be a pretty big development cost. I think it's pretty intense as far as what they would have to do to make that work. So I don't know if they'd be able to pull it off for Fire Emblem 16. I would hope that they would, but who knows. We've also got Morella and Maruna, and these are going to be basically the red and green archetype units. Usually the red and green units are Cavaliers that you get early on in the game. Characters like Cain and Abel, Stahl and Sully in Awakening. They don't always show up. They're pretty fluid with some of these archetypes sometimes. But generally speaking, you do tend to get 2 Cavaliers early on with slightly different stat variations, and they're sort of the red and green Christmas Cavaliers. So it seems like, you know, obviously if this leak is true, then in this case they'd be swapping them out for some mages. And both these characters are known for their wizard prowess. Morella is optimistic and energetic, and Maruna is quieter and calmer. There's also Felix, who is an impaler, who's recruited from the bandits. So this is going to be basically the Navarre character of this game, potentially. And so Navarre being the archetype of an enemy unit that you have to kind of convince on the battlefield to join you. So I think that sounds interesting. Overall, I'd have to say that I do like a lot of these names. They do sound about right, I would say. Maybe Dracul is kind of the one that stands out to me as being the sort of the most silly one. And that kind of sets off my alarms for having, like, you know, Corrin with fangs, basically. But overall, I do like the names in general. So if this is fake, and that's something that we'll get into even later on in the video as well, if this is fake, this is a really, really good fake because of some of the things that they do drop in here and hint in here. So we will have to see about that. Classes. We have Knight Errant. This is Elaine's class, mounted and sword. Gains lances on promotion. Hunters, monks, bards. So there you have your sort of dancers. Monks could be like light magic, for example. Vassals, which is the avatar's class. Player chooses weapon type. That could be really interesting because a lot of people were sort of happy with the fact that Robin in Awakening was able to use both sword and tome. And so if you were able to choose what you wanted, I do think that that's kind of cool as far as an avatar choice. Next up, we've got the Witch. I could see that being a thing. Summoners and Succubuses. Succubus sounds like it would be the Keybuyer class, which, you know, maybe could be sort of a female vampire, maybe with some kind of a Nosferatu effect where it drains your health or something like that. Imps, which functions as thieves. Impalers are the lance-using classes. That could work. Moonshifters / Laurel Wreaths. These are laguz-like. These are 3 tribes, wolf, bat, and dragon. More like the Togwol, Wolfskin, and Kitsune. So these would basically be the laguz of this game. And it kind of sounds like maybe they would be able to transform into their beast forms maybe at night. And that's something we'll talk about later too, because there is going to be a day and night cycle, or at least that's what this leak is also claiming. So that could be pretty interesting. I do think that really could introduce some cool mechanics for on the battlefield, especially if they have, you know, day and night during certain maps, and then maybe these characters are going to be obviously more powerful at night when they're able to transform. As for the 3 choices of like what they went with for the laguz here, wolves, bats, and dragons, I could see it. It makes sense. I don't know. It's just, it sounds about right, and I think that's one of the things that makes this leak as credible seeming as it is. But we're going to get into some stuff that I do think is kind of wishful thinking and maybe a little bit too good to be true. So let's keep going here. Hippogriff Rider, flying bows, might be female exclusive. I think that could be kind of cool. Maybe like a sort of redo of the Griffin Riders that we had, like in Fire Emblem Awakening. Dark Riders, mounted swords and axes. Maybe like a Dark Knight, but no more spellbooks. Mermans, which are going to be pirate-like. Okay, that's interesting. Phantoms, which are anima mages. And I will discuss that in a little bit as well. Vestals are going to be variations of the cleric class, and wizards are going to be the new names for the dark mages. As far as mechanics go, we do have a balance of both old and new mechanics, trying to please both sides of the fan base. And this, I don't know, this sounds a little too reaching to me. Are the devs actually paying enough attention to realize that the fan base is pretty divided as far as, you know, old school players that like the older style of Fire Emblem and new school players that kind of started with Fates and Awakening and like, you know, what they obviously started with and enjoy those games more than perhaps the old games? Would they actually go the extra mile to blend these things? I mean, you would hope. But are they actually paying enough attention to know that and to purposefully integrate this into a game? I'm not sure. Returning features, we have supports, marriages, no children, So no more children characters like in Awakening and Fates. A lot of people were kind of upset or disappointed with the way that they implemented the child characters in Fates. They were kind of just tacked on. It didn't make as much sense as it did in Awakening. Obviously, some people I think are going to be sad about no children. But for me personally, I just think that it feels weird to play through the entire game, or at least half the game, with the adult characters and then kind of retcon them and obsolete them for their children, who are obviously better because, you know, you have the skill inheritance going on. So I'm kind of split on the children thing. I think as long as the main cast is fine, I'm not going to be concerned about it. Skill inheritance is interesting to think about, but then when it comes to actually planning it out, it gets pretty annoying, like having to create your own like Word document of everything that's going on. It's just too intense, I think, sometimes. You'd rather just play the game, enjoy using the characters you like, not have to worry about which child ends up with Gale Force and which one you just screwed over because you married the parents incorrectly and paired them up wrong. So we've also got Pair Up making a return, which I think some people will appreciate, people who like Fates and Awakening. I'm not sure how I feel about Pair Up as a mechanic in general. I don't hate it. I don't necessarily love it. I'm kind of indifferent towards it. I think if they do it well enough, it's fine. I kind of liked the shield system in Fates where, you know, you take a certain number of hits and all of a sudden you got your shield meter beefed up, so then you can basically deflect one hit. I thought that was kind of interesting, but overall I'm still for the kind of classic Fire Emblem as well. I don't really have a preference. The weapon triangle will be a pre-Fates weapon triangle. So if you're not familiar with the Fire Emblem Fates weapon triangle, basically all of the weapons were built into one triangle in Fire Emblem Fates. So even like hidden weapons like shuriken and daggers, those were in the same weapon triangle as the swords, axes, and lances. You know, you had stuff like bows also integrated into that same weapon triangle as well, which was kind of something that we hadn't seen before. So basically we're going to be going back to pre-Fate stuff where swords are going to be axes, axes are going to be lances, and lances are going to be swords. And the rest of the stuff is going to keep its own weapon triangle maybe outside of that. So obviously, as we're about to discuss, there are going to be the three types of magic making a return in this game: Dark, Light, and Anima. And these are basically the GBA era types of magic and that weapon triangle. So light magic beating dark magic beating anima magic, and anima magic beating light magic. We've also got the return of skills, which I'm pretty stoked about. I mean, I don't know anybody that really hates the inclusion of skills, so that's cool. I'm down with that. Next up, Soul and Luna are going to have their effects swapped. And what that means is basically Soul being the skill that heals you and Luna being the skill that kind of diminishes your opponent's defenses. That's going to be switched. And I did see some people saying that didn't make any sense, but I think it makes absolute sense in the context of this game, because if you have vampires going around, that sun is going to hurt them. So that's the one that's going to be lowering defenses. And then you have Luna, the Moonlight. That makes more sense to be the healing one than in this case. So if this leak is fake, little details like this, I think, really solidify it and really make it seem like, I mean, this is just like a really, really interesting little tidbit that somebody really had to think about to put in there. Just an unnecessary nugget that kind of makes it seem more realistic, because they even thought down to like reversing some of the skill effects for this game because of vampires. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Wireless multiplayer would be making a return. That doesn't really surprise me because this is going to be on the Switch. I would hope that with the portability of the Switch, we would get a nice multiplayer mode or something like that going on. Hopefully a little bit better balanced than what we had in Fire Emblem Fates. But I did really like the My Castle feature in Fates when it came to getting skills from other people's castles and stuff. I thought that was a pretty interesting way to deal with things. So I would be interested and open to that. It's also going to be a versus mode, apparently. Double duel, similar to Awakenings mode. And Arena, the 4-player free-for-all from the GBA era. If you guys have ever played those old games, you'll know what it is. Basically, you know, you each have your 4 units on the opposite sides of the map, and you kind of step forward and fight each other, which is pretty interesting. Seeing that return, this is one of the things that kind of gets me, as like, I honestly don't think that they would ever go back to that, which kind of makes me feel like this is sort of wishful thinking, or someone crafting this going a little bit too far to give people what they would want. So already with the Dark, Light, and Anima Magic Triangle, I mean, that's something that I personally said that I wanted in our top 10 hopes and desires of Fire Emblem 16. I would like to go back to this Magic Triangle, because I think that, in my opinion, that's my favorite one that we had. I think it's the most interesting, giving them, you know, multiple magic types to work with and having them counter each other, having its own separate magic triangle from the normal combat triangle. I really, really like that. So seeing that in and of itself, to me almost seems like wishful thinking too. Like I don't know if we would ever go back to that old system. I mean, maybe. I would certainly hope so, but who knows? And now seeing this arena 4-player free-for-all from the GBA era, I don't know. It's getting fishy to me when I see stuff like this. Also, for new features, a day and night cycle. Stronger monsters appear at night. This could be super, super interesting. I personally really appreciate the monsters in games like Sacred Stones and Echoes. I love the different monster types. If they have a world map in this game, you know, similar to Gaiden and Echoes and Awakening, that sort of style, then basically I could see it being, you know, as you progress and move around the map, maybe it, you know, all of a sudden it's nighttime, now it's daytime, the next step you take, and perhaps, you know, if you encounter some monsters, especially in the case of some of these Moonshifters, you know, the wolves, bats, and dragons, maybe they're changed at night, maybe they're a lot more powerful at night, maybe the enemies are scarier at night, and you all of a sudden you're on a map in the middle of nowhere fighting them, and maybe you're outclassed because they're so powerful at night. That could be really cool. So I think that's a mechanic that I would really want to see. If this is going to be a real thing, that's definitely like on the right track, I think. That sounds awesome. And especially if they had like a day and night cycle during the battle. If you guys are familiar with Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, a lot of the laguz characters would have certain timers with their ability to shift into their animal form, and basically that would run out and then they would revert back to their normal form. So if this day and night cycle was present on the battlefield, then it could be like, you know, you can only, you know, transform your werewolf laguz people at night. And so to me, that seems to add a whole other layer of depth to your map strategy and you know, what you have to pay attention to in the battle. You know, when am I going to be able to transform these characters? When are they going to be more powerful? So that's really exciting to me. And what if, you know, for example, maybe some of your daytime characters are kind of weaker in night? What if there are extra mechanics built into the day and night cycle where, you know, maybe daytime characters are less accurate at night because they're having trouble seeing, and some of these night, you know, creepy crawly characters like the wolves, bats, and dragons, maybe they're more accurate at night, you know, to counteract this or to work into this day and night cycle. So I think that could be really exciting, and, you know, something that really could elevate this game and make it stand out in its own right as, you know, its own standalone Fire Emblem game. So I would be excited to see that for sure. Then we've got Amiibo, of course. I do think that, you know, whether this leak is real or not, Amiibo will factor into things. I think that Amiibo in general kind of needs some more uses to make it, you know, worth the $13 or whatever a piece. So seeing that this is going to have unlocks for that too, definitely something interesting. So this says it's going to unlock special maps against enemies themed from the map's origin. When beaten, you unlock an S-rank weapon. Alencia's Gambit, Hanoka, Leo, the chapters, and Marth's Embarks are among them. So I think that's interesting, but why an S-rank weapon? Maybe a one-time S-rank weapon that you'd get could be interesting. Seems a little bit overpowered, maybe. You know, perhaps if you don't get S-rank weapons in the game itself. But then imagine like Chapter 1, you scan your Marth Amiibo or something, and all of a sudden you have like an S-rank sword, maybe the Falchion that only the main character or somebody can wield. But that seems a little strange to me. I don't know that they would give away S-rank weapons that easily like that. I mean, I could see a random item drop or something like that, or maybe even item drops similar to what we got in Fire Emblem Fates, where you get kind of character-specific little costume armor pieces and stuff. So that could be interesting, but S-rank weapons, I don't know. That seems fishy to me. For the artist is apparently going to be Kotaro Yamada. This is an artist who drew both Lyn and Narshin in Fire Emblem Heroes. And honestly, if this is going to be a gothic horror type of game, I mean, I like this particular artist's art style. I don't have a problem with it, but it seems a little too lighthearted, cartoony, maybe too colorful for me to have this artist be the one that they selected for this game to do, you know, the character art. Unless, I mean, maybe this artist has a good range to them. I'm not sure. But, you know, right off the bat, I'm kind of wondering about that. I mean, I think it would fit better to see somebody, you know, for example, maybe the artist that did Camus's art in Fire Emblem Heroes. That would make a lot more sense to me to see for this game as far as, you know, the artist do all of the character art. And the last and final point of this leak, full voice acting, the avatar's name will be skipped. So I would be really excited to see the series jump back into voice acting. That's another thing that I had mentioned in our top 10 hopes and desires video. And the avatar's name being skipped does make sense. You know, if you do name your character and you have full voice acting in the game, that's going to clash with that. So that makes sense if they're going to go that route with it. Just skip the player character's name, get rid of that. Full voice acting, though, I think is kind of a double-edged sword. It is really amazing. It really helps you to connect with the characters a lot better. but at the same time, the costs of it are greater. And because of that, you tend to get less support conversations, kind of like how we saw in Fire Emblem Echoes. There weren't really that many. For the most part, overall, there were very, very few supports in Echoes, and I do believe that that came down to the voice acting that they had to do for those specific supports. I mean, I would be excited to see that it was full voice acting, but I would also be nervous. I would hope that there would be more support conversations than what we got in Fire Emblem Echoes, but who knows? So now, on top of all of this, because this leak has been out for a little while, and a lot of people do know about this, you guys have probably heard about this, maybe from other people's videos. In talking to another Fire Emblem YouTuber, I did find out that there is kind of a little bit of an update to this leak, and I will let them explain it for themselves. So now, for the first time ever on Lucky Crit, I'm going to be bringing on another Fire Emblem YouTuber into this video to kind of hear their thoughts and their opinion on things, and see if we can kind of make a conclusion about this leak overall, whether or not it's real, maybe list off all the points and stuff against it, why we think maybe it's not real. And so let's get into it. All right. Would you care to introduce yourself?
All right, are we live? Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mangs, and I have now introduced myself.
Okay, welcome aboard. So, you recently put out a video discussing this Fire Emblem 16 potential leak, correct?
I sure did.
Yep, and we'll do a little bit of a call out for that later in the video, so people can go check that out if they want to hear more about your thoughts. But in the time since then, you've been telling me that you actually found some more information about things, and maybe your opinions have changed a little bit. So would you mind telling me your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so to be fair, I'm going to be honest right now. I have not been mingling a lot in the communities where the leaks have taken place. I do not really hang out that much on Serenus Forest or in that community. I'm kind of busy with my own things. But what I did see, someone sent me a screenshot of a post that was made by the supposed leaker. Of course, it's difficult to know the facts. It could have been another impersonator, but this person basically made a post saying, OMG, Mangs Senpai noticed me, and then proceeded to post more leaks. And when I saw that post, something in me just went, that seems a little bit too fishy for me. The way that person reacted to my attention and then immediately putting out more information kind of made it seem to me like the person just really loved attention, and that kind of killed a little bit of the credibility on my end. I mean, I was skeptic to begin with, but that post, if it was made by the original leaker, kind of made me doubt it a little bit more than I otherwise would.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Yeah, it's kind of like, if you had put out something out there and like a bigger YouTuber that you respect made something about it, and then you kind of fanned about it and then put out more information just to get potentially
bad timing. But then again, I mean, it's so difficult to say whether or not this is legit or not, but to me at least, that kind of solidified it a little bit for me. But it's just the gut feeling. We don't know anything at this point. We can just assume, really.
Yep. Would you be excited if this was Fire Emblem 16, if it had this gothic horror theme?
I mean, you can, I'm holding up my wallet right now and just throwing money at the camera. Like, just take my money, Nintendo. Take my money, please. If this actually turns out to be true, then I think I will probably be more excited about a Fire Emblem game than I have been in a very long while. Because, of course, I'm a massive Castlevania fan. I love, the occult gothic horror stuff. Vampires, werewolves, bats, and all that. And to have a Fire Emblem that's sort of like set in a Castlevania setting, you have no idea how happy that would make me as a person. And I think one of the reasons why I put out the video was because deep in my heart of hearts, I just really so badly want these leaks to be true. So I'm willing to actually, suspend a bit of, suspension of disbelief. Like, I just want it to be true because I think that it would be amazing. It would be an absolutely cold hit among the community if they actually did it. As much as some people complain about edgy vampires in Fire Emblem would be silly. Nah, I think it could be amazing if done right.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think there's a fine line, especially with the people that don't like the whole style that they had going on with Fates. I think if they took it and made it even more of sort of a, Fates kind of a meme on top of like the edgy vampire stuff, I think that's kind of risky,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, overall, I think, though, that the gothic horror idea with Fire Emblem just sounds like it blends really, really well. But that also scares me, because I'm like, this sounds a little too good to be true. Like would they have come up with this?
Exactly. And, the whole gimmick of this leak is that it's supposed to be like a more adult-themed Fire Emblem, which I think is something that a lot of people want, but I don't necessarily think they're gonna give us. Of course, Echoes was slightly darker than what we're used to, but still pretty child-friendly, if I may say so. Like, we're not gonna go back to Fire Emblem 4 style, child hunts and death cults and incest. We're not gonna get that again. We're not gonna get the Japan-exclusive adult-themed Fire Emblem. I think that's a stupid move on their part because they'd be alienating a lot of young fans. Like, we're never gonna get like an adult-rated Fire Emblem as much as we want to, but I'm fine with like child-friendly Fire Emblem with a little like dark undertone. I would be happy with that, absolutely, as long as we don't get like Vampire Corin, who's just as stupid as the regular Corin, just with a cloak. That would make me really sad.
That was exactly my thought. You know, I was thinking about making a thumbnail when this video goes live, and I was like, I couldn't go beyond Vampire Corin in my mind. So we'll have to see if that comes true. Yeah.
I would. You know, I would be silly and stupid, but you know, I'd also like it a little bit, but also would be pretty stupid, really.
Yeah, so there were definitely some things in this leak that kind of set off some red flags for me. I think just in terms of like being too good to be true, like going back to the GBA weapon triangle, arena from the GBA era. Then there was even like they threw in like wireless multiplayer and stuff, which like wireless multiplayer I like in Fire Emblem. Some people really don't like it. They think that it doesn't really contribute anything. But I happen to be a fan of it. I just don't know if we would see that. It would make sense on the Switch, I guess. I don't know, just certain lines like that were included in particular in this leak kind of make me feel like it's just, I don't know, I guess it's wishful thinking to me, because it's like, that's exactly what we would want, right? Like, we would want an awesome, like, darker Fire Emblem, you know, with maybe one of the older weapon triangles that people really liked a lot, and have something that both sides could come together on finally, instead of, you know, the divide that we have right now.
Yeah,
so I don't,
absolutely.
maybe I'm too cynical, but I just kind of feel like that makes this seem more fake to me. You know what I mean?
When something's too good to be true, or when something seems too good to be true, it is more often the case that it is not true. You know, it's, you know, when you read fan fiction and it's a little bit, you know, it's you know, again, it seems like wishful thinking. So that's probably why I got so happy when I read it, because this person, whoever this person is, I don't know anything about this person, by the way, who's giving out the supposed leaks. I think it's a she, but I don't really know her name or anything. But this person's really creative, and
yeah,
you know, if this actually ended up being true, like, if anything, I think you know, he might want to hire her, because if she was in charge of development of Fire Emblem game, I think it would be a really good one based on the leaks that I've read. I read it and I was like, wow, this is really good, you know, with the names and everything. It really, because to me, you mentioned there's a lot of red flag, and there's a million red flags for sure, but I also went over it and I was like, this is really good. Like, if this was an actual game, then this would be enjoyable, and this is really the way I can imagine them taking the franchise into, considering with Fates, they tried out something new for the first time. They went away from the Western medieval knight fantasy, and they went into Oriental culture with the Japanese stuff, and it was a smash hit. Everyone loved it. And I think they would look at that and go, maybe we should try with the new Fire Emblem game to incorporate something new every time. And this time around, it could be sort of a Castlevania theme. And it just sounds to me like something they'd be interested in doing.
How do you feel about some of the like unit types and stuff that were discussed in this leak?
Yeah, so there were a bunch of new classes, obviously inspired by, you know, Castlevania, Dracula, vampire movies. You know, you got the wizards, you got the impalers. I mean, in particular, what I liked the most was the shape-shifting werewolf types, the Moonshifters, I believe they were called, which, of course, I'm pretty sure they're going to be connected to the day-night cycle, which we can talk about later. I got a lot to say about that. It's probably the feature I'm mostly excited about, if it happens to be legit. But yeah, I like the classes. They sounded, again, very real to me, kind of like how Fates did their Japanese style classes with the samurai and the blacksmith and everything. This was kind of like, you know, Dracula themed classes. Pretty sure we're going to see some vampire hunter, like witch slayers with wooden stakes and stuff like that. I actually really like them. In particular, the Moonshifter, the werewolf laguz, the bat laguz. Things that I really think is a treasure trove of design. Like, imagine all the cool werewolf and bat laguz characters they could come up with. It's I really liked it, you know. But again, big Castlevania fanboy, biased as hell. Not gonna admit, you know.
No, I think that like this, it just melds really perfectly with Fire Emblem, with like everything. Because you're right, even down to like the laguz. And I would hope that we would get like actual more realistic werewolves this time, because the Fates werewolves were kind of weird. And this is gonna be like something else that I think people should keep in mind is this is our second ever jump back to consoles. And the first time we had this jump, it was after Sacred Stones. And the jump between Sacred Stones and Path of Radiance is like massive, you know? And now with the Switch, we have games like Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, people describe that as like a full single player MMO in terms of like the world. So like world building, if they go all out on this game, like this could be a really impressive game. I mean, not even just graphics, but you know, this could be a serious leap for Fire Emblem. So I would hope that they would go all in with something like this, with a really cool concept. And I also agree, I think that the day and night cycle would be really, really interesting. One of my favorite parts about Sacred Stones were the monster battles. And so seeing like a day and night cycle where maybe they come out in force at night and, you know, the gameplay gets switched up in the nighttime, yeah, I think that'd be amazing.
The day-night cycle for me, when I read about these leaks, was what made me go, yes, 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 yes. This just makes so much sense to me. This is the mechanic that Fire Emblem needs, because if there's one thing about Fire Emblem that has always been very central to the gameplay but never in focus, it's the turn count, right? The turn count is very arbitrary in that very rarely is the turn count involved in the story. You know, you have sometimes in the Game Boy Advance games you have the defense chapter where it's like defend for 7 turns, but you never hear Ashura going like, we must make it to the end of the cannon within turn 9, you know? Yeah. Because you can't do that, because that sounds stupid. But at the same time, I feel like the turn count is so integral to Fire Emblem that it should be incorporated into the game via game mechanics. And what's so amazing about a day-night cycle is that you can literally have a meter at the top of your screen that like slowly fills up, showing you how many turns it takes before night kicks in. And what's so amazing about this is that it adds an element of timing to Fire Emblem that I think can be used in so many creative ways. Like, for example, as I said in my video, imagine you have a defense chapter. The vampires and werewolves are attacking the humans, and basically Godfrey or whoever says, you know, we have to hold out until daytime, where they'll be weakened, and then we can go on the offense. You hold out for 7 days or 7 turns, night becomes day, and then suddenly you're on the attack, and you have to take out as many of the vampires as you can before it's nighttime again. Then they come back and start attacking, and there's so many things you can do about this, story-wise, design-wise, map design-wise. When I read about the day-night cycle, I was like, please make this true, because everything I want in a Fire Emblem game. Just the timing, it would be so good. And you could have, again, werewolves, they could only be able to shift at night. You could have spells that work differently at night, tomes that maybe get super effective during the night, maybe light magic, you know, is weaker during the night, you know. Please be true. That's...
Yeah. I mean, you could even go down to like the Soul and Luna skills. What if they were like really powerful? You know, Soul's really powerful during the day, but it's awful during night. It just changes.
Or maybe have its activation rate increase during the day and halve during night, or maybe even have different effects added onto it at night and day.
There's just so much
you can do with that.
All right, so I think we touched on most things. So overall, I guess my final kind of question for you is going to be like, at the end of the day, if you had to like go with gut feeling, do you think that this leak is going to turn out to be true or fake, based on everything that we discussed?
I'm gonna have to. My heart is saying yes, but my mind is saying no.
I know that. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you. Yeah, there's so many good things in this leak that I want it to be real as well, but it just seems too perfect. And yeah, when something's too good to be true. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor talking to you. So guys, if you do want to hear more of Mangs' thoughts, be sure to go and check out his video on this leak on his channel, and then we'll have some cards going on the top of the video, so you can check those out as well, or check out the description.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of your channel, big fan of your work, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what videos you come up with in the future. You make some stellar content, my friend.
And you do as well. Thank you so much, Mangs.
Leave a like and a comment on this video. It really helps out the channel a lot, don't you know?
Yes, and be sure to go check out Mangs as well, guys. Thank you.
Poogie.
So overall, it kind of seems like these leaks are probably not real. However, if they are real, I would be pretty excited about this theme overall. I think, like I said earlier, probably kind of a slippery slope. I would be afraid that they would go a little bit too fan servicey with the whole vampire concept, maybe make it too edgy, you know, or something like that. If they went the full way and did a really great job with it, obviously I'd be super excited to see this sort of gothic horror theme, you know, in a Fire Emblem game. I think that it melds really, really well with Fire Emblem as far as, you know, all the classes and everything go. But aside from that, if you would like to hear the full uncut version of my conversation with Mangs, I will be uploading that later on. You can check that out up here, and that's going to be its own standalone video, of course, because it was way too long to, you know, have everything in this video. So I tried to cut it down to just the clips that were really, really important, I think, to give off the overall concept that we were talking about in this video. So definitely be sure to check that out if you want to hear more about my conversation with Mangs. And a big shout out and thank you to Mangs for being a part of this video as well. Definitely be sure to check him out. Links, as always, in the description below. And that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts about this potential leak in the comment section down below. If you like this video, you know what to do. Make sure you also get subscribed to the channel if you haven't yet, so you don't miss any of our new videos. And also a big shout out to our supporters over on Patreon. Patreon is, of course, the place where you can choose to support us monthly and also get access to some really cool extra stuff as well. And as always, if you're interested, you can also come and join our Discord server for even more discussion beyond this video and to check out what we have going on over there. We tend to hang out there pretty often, so come check it out. And lastly, of course, be sure to follow us on Twitter at LuckyCritGaming for any news and updates revealed on the fly. And I'll see you all next time.